Resident Evil 4 Remake is a tremendous achievement, but like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, sometimes excellence comes as effortless, and sometimes there's a noticeable effort. If there's ever an exciting discussion about why something is made, it's remakes, as they're one of the few experiences where an actual objective demonstration of what was and what should be can both be pointed to quite easily. Few companies have shown excellence in moving a game or series forward as Capcom has when it comes to remakes. Sure, RE3's remake was a bit adequate, but RE2 was phenomenal, and Resident Evil 4 may be very close to that. Let's begin. My brand is me, my sponsor is me, and if I've saved you any money or warned you away from a bad game, hit subscribe and notify all or check out the Patreon. Now, this isn't the first time that a game maker treats a game with kid gloves when it comes to spoilers, but let's just say that the list of things that shouldn't be said or can't be said aren't just lip service in this review. I can tell you that. And the restriction also includes that they've asked us to use just a little bit of our footage, but mostly the B-roll. I will discuss the impacts on my review as I go through it. It wasn't just that I enjoyed my time with Resident Evil 4 Remake as a return to a unique Resident Evil game. It was that the changes, most of them, felt like something or someone was sitting next to me when I complained about anything in the original game. I was like, you know what? If that helps to make it better, we should change it, including story and pacing. And Resident Evil 4 Remake starts with the president's daughter missing. It's up to Leon to track her down. Entering a mysterious and deadly Spanish village, things do not go as planned, and an evil cult infected with a virus has taken over the country. But then really nothing ever goes as planned in a Resident Evil game. There's one part in the remake where you're working through this tight ravine, curling in forests around you on your right and left, moving to a spot more open. And just as you're breathing a sigh of relief as the game's growing claustrophobia started to become noticeable, you realize what you're seeing. You recognize the immensity of what Leon is up against, at least in pure numbers, and it's solidified with nothing more than a hint of a pattern that you can see, where you look out and you go, oh man, this is way, way worse than being alone in a forest. It's being on my own and not alone in a forest. That kind of storytelling and that kind of left field presentation is what you can expect. In many ways, this remake is profoundly different than the original, while somehow still holding on to the DNA of the originator like a zombie on the neck of a last survivor, clutching on to specific cornerstones of the original game for dear life, wrapped within the improved Resident Evil gameplay that we've seen in the later titles. Where the story changes, alters, or transforms from the original, I can't tell you. Literally. I cannot tell you. But if I could, I would finish the description of those changes with the word surprising, with more story elements that really do feel like they add some weight to the characters and interesting story beats. Speaking of feeling, Resident Evil has always had its own structure and tactile nature to its game controls and combat, and oftentimes this is a notable problem. Originally, like a tank with two treads in the shape of feet, the developers have improved the movement or tried with each sequel until we got Resident 6 and 7, and the problem really became more of a difference in taste. While Resident Evil 4 Remake, the movement has been improved, it's especially in the interactions, but it's not like Leon is incredibly spry. His odd steadfast refusal to turn and walk the way he's headed is humorous, but also valuable a bit during combat, with a quick turn in there, letting him pirouette and punch a couple bullets through the heads of an enemy or press a knife through the throat of some creepy tentacled thing with ease. Okay, maybe not perfect ease. Finishers let you take out enemies on the ground as well, which is something new. That also means movement and combat are combined here in a partnership that excels compared to the original, but still does feel a little bit stiff. Switching to a shotgun, then a stab, then a finisher does feel powerful and impactful and smoother than the original, because some of this didn't even exist then. It doesn't negate danger. It simply makes Leon more fun to play and offers more enjoyable exploration in both landscape and locations, but more importantly, lethality. Weapons can be hot shortcutted with handguns, bolt throwers, up-close weapons, and more that I can't say right now. Different guns can be upgraded and adjusted at the merchant, and with the knife's ability to parry attacks, stave off attacks, and jab until your heart's content, it can now be damaged as well, which you can repair at the merchant, but it adds a whole other feeling to the combat. Add that to the new features like stealth, which, while not always as slick as games where their main draw is stealth, it's usable sometimes, especially when you find yourself very low on ammo and just running around with that Bowie knife. Though, I found that if an enemy is facing you pretty much regardless anywhere in the game world, the chance of them seeing you is almost guaranteed. These times when the game lets you creep around a bit also lets you see and notice the environmental storytelling and the confidence that the Resident Evil 4 Remake team actually had. Environmental storytelling doesn't have to be so in your face that you're consistently searching the game world in zoomed in mode. And Resident Evil 4, building off the great theme and atmosphere of the original, consistently has you wondering and looking. As you walk past flickering candles and an odd statue missing its head, you wonder, Why didn't somebody just grab the other statue in the next room? Or was that head removed on purpose? Lead to this realism that you can see and feel, even if it's intermixed with Resident Evil's oddly placed main valve pressure wheels that feel like they should be in a sewer, not in an old Spanish village. These are villages with odds and ends scattered around, like everyone got in a panic and dropped whatever they were doing and just never fully got back to it. But the odds are always helpful, like the first time you find out that for whatever reason, Spanish villages have a lot of grenades in their credenzas. One of the reasons why so many people love Resident Evil games, though, is that mixture of horror and quirky. What's less enjoyable is the same thing that we see in so many other games, which is the marking of usable items, this time with yellow hazard-like spray paint on almost anything that can be bumped or brushed or banged or broken apart. While highlighting vision has an enormous number of problems on its own, including people just running around spamming whatever button it is, like a World War II ship pinging for subs, the material makeup, shape, or something else could have been changed here versus a spray paint. This does make the game look a bit off, with you working through a dang, dripping womb-like tunnel, only to see yellow boxes across the way, totally spray painted to indicate, hey, you can smash these. While performance mode and resolution mode both offer their own looks, with the former running at a smoother frame rate regardless of console, ray tracing is on its own setting, which lets you pick it and run it if you want. Consoles look to be running a lower resolution on that ray tracing compared to the PC, but it wasn't so noticeable that it was instantly off-putting. The real trade-off seems to be really, regardless of the resolution or performance modes, the frame rate isn't always steady, and there are times where it noticeably drops in larger areas during some battles. Performance without ray tracing is going to net you the closest smooth FPS that you can get. One thing it won't fix, though, is the texture resolution. With games like this, you're always up to your neck in enemies' insides that are now outside, or scratching through some broken rock wall, or leaping out a window into a box of sharpened hunting tools. Regardless of how you do it, you do come up and close and personal with the game world, and that includes these textures. There's some pronounced cottage cheese level texture work going on in the game. Sometimes it's fine, but other times it looks like it's from a title so far back that it could be during the original game's release area. They aren't really hidden in back of the way places either. Many times they're right in front of you. Regardless, the PC offers the best performance if you have the power. One vital construct so often overlooked in horror games is sound and music, but many times it's relegated to only noticing it if it's bad. With options for various sound systems, including home theaters to low-shelf TV speakers, the game also lets you adjust the angle of the speakers in your setup, as well as some other effects in there that are impactful in the way it plays. You can scratch your way through branches, or sometimes hear your own footsteps along a rainy crevasse. Then, growing off into the distance, bouncing from rocks around you, is the sound of chanting. And the way it filters up through the foliage and then becomes almost confusing in its direction is an excellent example of good sound work. So too are the gun sounds. Now, the voices here are good. While Resident Evil is known for a number of corny voiceovers, for the most part, Resident Evil 4 Remake is on more solid ground, with most characters responding to situations the way you would expect, or at least expect in a Resident Evil game. Characters are lovingly over the top when they need to be, and pared down a bit when you look at the original title versus the remake. Music, though, I like this. It's excellent. It's atmospheric. It's ethereal when it needs to be, but always solidly Resident Evil creepy, where many times it's not about the arrangement or the progression in the song, but just how it feels and vibes with you as a gamer in your exploration. Discordant and ropey one moment, the next more classically sophisticated. Resident Evil 4's music is a noticeable pillar within the audio presentation, and while it's not something I would listen to outside of the game, it worked well to build the sense of suspense no matter where I was in it. But where Resident Evil 4 Remake relishes and in fact re-emboldens that feeling of the game and the series is in the exploration. Each Resident Evil has felt different in this way, and 4 always felt like it was a bit of a turn towards slightly more Western style horror, and with the added flexibility in gameplay that we see here and a fresh take on some of the core gameplay itself, where surprise, in my opinion, is handled with a, oh wow, I actually didn't think of them doing it that way, versus you just ruined everything kind of reaction. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system, and rent is replaced with deep sale on PC titles. This is something that I believe that you can buy without any hesitation, as long as you take into account the various issues that I have discussed. The newfound combat mechanics, exploration changes, story beats are awesome, but the occasional lackluster performance, spotty textures from 2009, and a stiff protagonist can still hold it back and make it feel a little bit older than it actually is. But what excites me the most about this remake is I'm talking about it in the same way I talked about Resident Evil 2's remake, and to me that is actually quite shocking. What else is shocking is we're done with this review. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you didn't. I would love for you to check out the Patreon. Peace out. Gang gang.